talked to like 30 people, like internationally, different people, different roles, and they were like, cool problem. We are interested in having a solution to that kind of stuff. And then we basically kind of lied to ourselves. We were like, okay, they all want to buy when we build, but at the end of the day, they were just being like nice or not, like trying to say no to us.
Hello and welcome to Software Engineering Tales. I'm really glad that you could make it today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As a first thing, if you could, introduce yourself to our audience and talk a little bit about what you do right now in our field.
Yeah, so my name is Orell. I'm a software engineer, kind of data engineer too. I do a lot of freelance work, and I kind of got into the whole topic by studying engineering, electrical engineering first, and then did a lot of software engineering along the way and kind of stuck with that. So that's what I do nowadays.
Does it mean that you dealt more with hardware in the beginning? Or what should I imagine under the electrical engineering?
Yeah, so when I got started with studying electrical engineering, I kind of got into it because of embedded systems, that kind of stuff. So before that, I played around with the 8-bit microcontrollers, and I wanted to understand more about that. But I quickly realized that hardware is not what I wanted to do, and stuck with the software side of things. During my studies, I more and more focused on software engineering for simulations, for example, doing like radar scattering simulations, and this is kind of what brought me into the high performance computing place. And then from there, it's all moving data between systems. So that's why I'm now doing a lot of data engineering too.
So you are basically acting as a mostly as a consultant or freelancer for various projects. I can imagine. Can you go a little bit deeper into like specifics what your work looks like these days?
Yeah.
Basically, or recent challenges you can mention.
Yeah, good question. I think this is twofold. Like first, I'm doing a lot of like data integration projects. So everything between there's data being produced somewhere at some source, and then people want to do AI, business intelligence, or something like that with that. And I'm kind of working the whole like place in between. So I'm not doing like machine learning most of the time, but I'm trying to make the data more useful and more like make it easier to work with the data that's available. And I think the biggest problem there, like in the freelance space in general, is like getting clients. That's kind of always a problem because you have to do a lot of like acquisition work, marketing, that kind of stuff. So that is sometimes a little bit draining and is taking away from the actual tech that you kind of want to do and what you like, wanted to do when you got into the field. But tech-wise, it's mostly Python, some fast API, some DuckDB, Airflow, like all the, let's say, typical libraries and frameworks in the data stack nowadays. And every once in a while, I still do some C++, for example, when it's really like high performance critical stuff.
Yeah, because I'm not myself very deep in like data game, but I know from people around me that usually the most costly work-wise is to get the data ready, and then you can work with it. But have a good data set, have the data ready. That's that's the main challenge quite often in these applications. But let's stay a bit with that freelance aspect, because I'm always curious, because I'm like normally full-time employed software engineer, and I couldn't imagine even where to start. How did you get your first client when you decided, okay, I'm going freelance?
So I think I have to go back a bit further because I did startup work before. Like I tried to found a startup, and then we kind of it like didn't
Uh-huh.
work out for several reasons. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I was like, okay, I'm not seeing myself as 9 to 5 full-time employee. Then I had someone asking me if I can consult for them on a like very small project, and that was basically where I realized, okay, maybe like the skills I have are in need at least in some places, and I can make this work. And then I kind of got started with freelancing and talking to people, trying to get projects. But after this first small project, I had a lot of like a very long dry spell project wise. So I had to stick with it for quite a while till it kind of paid off at the end. But then kind of as
Yeah.
soon as you have a couple of clients, more clients will kind of come because you have the proof that you can work the problems and work on the things they want. If that makes
And
sense.
is it, yeah. Is it usually like a recommendation from people you worked with previously and stuff like that, or is it something else?
That is certainly a big part of it. Like having a good network where people recommend you, and then you're doing good work there, and they will recommend you further. Certainly, what helps. What I'm also trying to do is a lot of like LinkedIn marketing, posting, kind of trying to share my ideas, my thoughts about developments in the field. And then I also go to
Yeah.
meetups and speak at conferences and that kind of stuff, trying to just be on people's minds when they think about data problems.
Yeah, that's that's how we play the game, right? And
Yeah,
I guess that's also the part of you being a bit more active on LinkedIn lately. This
yeah,
whole package of like personal brand for getting on people's mind easily. Yeah. Let's get back to like a more related to our job
yeah.
part of this interview, because uh, one thing that I'm curious about. So what is basically the difference between like a software engineering and the data engineering? Where is the border, and what I can take from that as a software engineer, basically?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think it's very unclear. Like there are a lot of different definitions, especially the more you get into the data field, the less um, defined the roles become. For me, software engineering is a lot about the process as well. I think a lot of software engineers doing like at the end also data engineering to some degree because you also
Yeah.
take inputs from the user or from another system and then doing something with it, processing it, and then storing it at some place. That's basically what software engineering is, more or less. And data
Yeah.
engineering takes this to another scale, maybe. So it's mostly like continuous data that's coming in. It's not user inputs, it's just kind of data being generated by some system or by multiple systems, a lot of different data sources. And the output is also just going into another system as well. So it's not interactive in the way that a lot of software is that we think of it as software at least. Like if you have a web app, yeah, usually like you put something in there and it returns something. And in data engineering, it's more like, okay, we have this data and then we move it to these three like systems. Then we do something with that, pre-process it, store it in a database, and then from there, business intelligence can take it, or ML can take ML people, data scientists can do something with
Yeah.
it.
So is it fair to say that you need to have a pretty strong understanding of really like low level elements of how software works or how processes works to be able to be really efficient? Because I guess that matters a lot in the data engineering,
Um,
right?
to some degree, I would say yes. To others, no. Again, like software, like data engineering, there's people coming from software engineering going into data engineering, and then there's also people coming from data science going into data engineering, or business
Yeah.
intelligence going into data engineering. And these are usually very different roles in my experience, at least. Like if you come from software engineering, what you do most of the time is custom software development for data integration, data validation, that kind of stuff. And when you come
Yeah.
from the data science part of the field, you're more about configuring pipelines with pre-built blocks. And I think these are very different requirements that you have regarding your skill set too. But it's all data engineering, and that makes it confusing sometimes, because people are like, okay, I'm a data engineer. What do you do? Oh yeah, I work with Power BI. And others are like, okay, I'm doing like low-level software development for integrating, I don't know, tens of
Yeah.
megabytes per second into some storage system. So very, very broad spectrum of work there.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. Definitely. Okay. If I'm a like normal software engineer, uh, where could I have a look? What should I start with if I want to get more knowledge in the data space?
Um, Not so sure actually. I kind of got into it by accident, I would say.
Yeah,
Um, I,
that's usually the case.
I would probably go for a like Udemy course on data engineering. I think they have a couple of intro to data engineering courses where you at least get the basic idea of what parts of the system there are, where you can do stuff with your skill set. And I would say it's always advisable to kind of extend on your skill set, not go on a like approach the problem from the completely different side. So if you're doing software engineering now, I probably wouldn't build Power BI dashboards as the next step. I would
Yeah.
probably be more like, okay, how do I integrate like different data sources into a database or into a data lake or something like that? There's a lot of Python coding or whatever language you want to use involved in
Hmm.
it. So this way you can see something quicker because it builds on your current skill set. And you can also use all the regular tools that you're used to, like Git, CI, CD, testing, all that kind of stuff. And the more you go into these like hyper-scaling cloud providers, the less of that you get, at least for like in a simple way. It gets more complicated, especially if you are on your own and you have to figure out all the like permissions and services. I don't even know how many services AWS offers, but it's probably like well in the hundreds.
Gazillion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And so one thing that I'm curious about, because you are doing it for some time now. So you started doing it b before AI became so much, important part of everything in IT
yeah,
as it's today. And I want to ask not about the ML part of, the data science things, but specifically about like, AI tools and AI influencing the actual job of, integrating multiple sources of data or anything like that in the data engineering. What changes can you see there, these days?
yeah. I think it's fair to say that this has changed quite a lot of like stupid work, basically, like where you just have to do the work manually and then be done with it. You can do this now a lot quicker, especially if you have like a data schema with from some place and you need to transform it to like so another library can understand it. You just put it into like an LLM and it transforms it, and you usually have to tweak it a little bit. Um, Maybe
Yeah.
especially if you have like very new libraries where you like have data types maybe that are not supported in version 0.1 but in 0.2 they are, something like that. And they do a lot of other tasks that are repetitive. It's surprisingly good with SQL. Like you can basically tell them, okay, this is what my data looks like, this is what I want to find out, and what would be a SQL statement for that. And then you can also tell, okay, I don't want to have it this way, I want it another way because I know it's more performant or whatever. And it also does that. So I'm not sure why SQL is so well suited for that, but it works extremely well. For Python, it depends on what kind of libraries you use. What I found is that it often kind of hallucinates functions that are not there or properties that are not there. Sometimes even other libraries that are not there or that are named like differently. So you have to be careful with that, especially as a like consultant. I'm kind of responsible for my work, and if something
Yeah,
happens, I'm liable. So I have to also make sure that I don't put any sensitive information in there. You should also like
yeah,
be careful about that if you're a full-time employee. Um, but for me or for freelancers, for consultants, I think it's even more risky.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And one one interesting thing, I recently spoke with my friend who is like a data scientist, basically,
Yeah,
and he mentioned that they started, moving towards like more like better commands, for example, describing the columns and rows in the tables, uh, to be more, clear towards AI, because it
yeah.
helps them then to create some, ML approaches to get the most of it. And I think that's also a huge thing to also think
I
about, like the commands in
yeah,
the code.
I think that's kind of funny because people never document something for other people, but for a like AI system, they suddenly start writing comments where
Yeah,
you're like, okay, you kind of treat it as this stupid thing that reads exactly what's there, but at the end of the day, people are just the same way. They
yeah,
have to like process the code that they see, and the more obvious it is what it does, the easier it is to like understand, and the less mental load you also have to understand it. Sure, like sometimes people say code has to be self-documenting and stuff like that, and sure, there are ways to make it easier to understand code, but having some comments at the right location is also highly valuable and
yeah,
is something apparently people start doing for AI, but not for people. Like it's just interesting.
yeah. What do you think will be the next, the next big challenge when it comes to software engineering and data engineering?
I think integrating these AI tools into the workflows without messing everything up, because they still do a lot of like they make a lot of mistakes, especially with more complex languages that also may not have a like idiomatic way of doing things.
Yeah,
Um, Sometimes it feels like they like learned from Stack Overflow, but the questions and not the answers. Uh, so there's a lot of things around like issues around that, but also still training junior engineers to write code and to understand what's happening and doing system design and stuff like that, because at the moment it feels like all companies are kind of not hiring any juniors anymore,
yeah,
but in 5 years we won't have any new seniors. I mean, as a freelancer it's good for me, I guess, at the end of the day, because people like will require senior engineers to do the work, but it's not good, like a good development for the field overall.
yeah. I, I guess we discussed that quite recently with one of my colleagues on this podcast, with Scott, and we both said that we fear that, it's now quite hard for junior or entry level people to get into the industry, but because there is less and less of this kind of jobs, and if this continues, I think it can unbalance the whole system. and
Yeah,
but but that's the thing, and maybe there will be, different junior roles. But I've spoken quite recently with a few people who were trying to get into the industry, or quite new, and I can tell that they rely a lot, even in their learning, on tools like ChatGPT, and, and it's not always correct, right?
yeah,
So I'm a little bit worried, like, if if we are getting all a bit, lazy sometimes and maybe misdirected piece by piece. So yeah, let's see.
I
I can't imagine where it will go.
yeah, I kind of noticed that with myself that I don't even Google anymore. I just go like straight to usually Perplexity because it at least has sources
Yeah,
about what it's telling me. But
yeah,
I felt like okay, this is kind of worrying in some sense at least that I'm not doing any actual research anymore. I'm just kind of asking a Gen AI tool and it tells me something and I'm kind of like, I guess that's okay. Uh, I mean, for some problems, I think that is actually okay because I have enough knowledge and experience to say, okay, this code looks fine. It's not a like super critical system. Probably works, but it's still you can't push stuff to Git or do pull requests, like approve pull requests if you don't understand what's happening. And what I saw a couple times on LinkedIn are people are like, okay, there's this pull request by ChatGPT and it has like 15,000 lines of code changes. Like, what? How do you review that? It's impossible. You just have to
yeah,
reject, even though it was like someone worked on that, but you can't approve it at the end of the day.
yeah, because you can't really check it.
Yeah,
I think that's a real good advice, which I saw more than once recently, to treat any AI generated code as external contributor to the project.
yeah,
So every line needs to be understood and reviewed and cleared. So I think that's a good approach to any like prompt,
yeah.
coding and stuff like that.
And since these tools change like day by day, you have to like treat each contribution as if they were by a new external contributor because
Oh,
they have like like different prompts or the same prompts return completely different results if there's a jump in the version or you use a different LLM. So you have to be very careful about that, even though there's a big potential in doing like using AI to do all the small like busy work that you usually don't want to do.
yeah. One other topic that I have in mind, because since you are freelancing, you need to deal with various teams and various people. Would you say that communication and people skills are one of the hardest things in software engineering in general, or in the industry, or is it like easy for you?
Um, I wouldn't say it's easy for me. I don't think it's easy for almost all people, especially tech people. I think the biggest problem is that there's very little awareness about how important these like people skills are in some teams at least. Um, because at the end of the day, we have to translate business problems into tech solutions, and then also back again to business talk, because we build something, and we have to make people understand what the value of the thing is, and that goes back to talking business again. And sure, depending on the company, there are different layers of abstractions between that, but still, if you're a product owner doesn't understand you because you're talking about pointers and heap and stack allocation, that kind of stuff, then the product owner can like there's no way they can translate this to something that users or business people will understand at the end of the day. So I think as software engineers or data engineers, we have to be more approachable in terms of understanding the business and also speaking the business.
Yeah. And do you have some tips and tricks how to get better in that, or what you
It's
personally did?
a lot of practice. Also, like listening, active listening. Always listen to people. Also, if you're like people who are 5 years further in their career, they probably have figured out ways to deal with that stuff. Kind of observe how they do things, what they do, what they communicate,
Yeah.
what they don't communicate, because sometimes it's just about leaving out the stuff that nobody cares about at the end of the day, even though that might be the
Yeah.
thing that you as a tech person are most excited about, but nobody in the on the C level cares about, like, if you use Python or Golang or whatever, or even like more detailed stuff. I think
Yeah.
that is just practice, and I guess the more you talk to people, the better you get at it, and the more you are also aware of the problem, the more you can work on it like explicitly.
Yeah. One thing that I ask everyone on this podcast is if you can tell me about some time that you really messed up and what you learned from that.
Yeah. So that works perfectly with the like last topic we just had. um, like I was mentioning that I was building a startup with a friend of mine, and we talked to a lot of people, but we did not have the experience at that time on how to talk to these people and how to understand what problem they had. So we were all excited. We talked like 30 people, like internationally, different people, different roles, and they were like, "Cool problem. We like, are interested in having a solution to that kind of stuff." And then we basically kind of lied to ourselves. We were like, okay, they all want to buy when we build, but at the end of the day, they were just being like nice or not, like trying to say no to us
Yeah.
in a direct way, I guess. So when we realized that we already had built quite a bit of tech, and we invested quite a bit of time. So that was obviously a like downer at that point. But we kind of reflected what we did and what we did wrong, and then started doing a new round of interviews with a very much more open-minded, and then it worked much better, even though we still didn't like the thing didn't work out at the end. But at least we had some sense of how to talk to people now and how to approach the whole product discovery topic, even though it's not a software engineering topic, like at least not a tech topic in that way.
Yeah, but I think pretty interesting because a lot of people at some point in their careers can, think about building something of their own, even though it doesn't need to be full, fledged startup, but maybe some, side project or something. So do you have some pointers how to really do that, like product discovery thing?
Don't talk about what you think, like about your solution or even the problem. Just kind of ask people what their problems are, what they're working on, what they're interested in, and what their kind of motivation is to solve the problem. But it is like there are very subtle things you have to like notice, and also if you just ask them what's your problem, well, like what's the problem you would like to solve the most at the moment, like people will most likely not tell you. You have to be more
Yeah.
more sensitive, or yeah, and how to go about that. But that is again kind of what kind of person you are, and also what kind of person the other person is.
Yeah.
And you probably need like psychology degrees and several like years of experience on judging people and to do this in a better way, or you're just that kind of person who knows how to do that. Like some people are just kind of born marketing people or salespeople. They just
Yeah.
kind of have a feeling for that, and then the experience and the training, and they can do everything. But as a tech person, you usually are not, and you don't want to impose yourself with like stupid questions. Even though that's what you have to do in that sense. Even though they're not stupid, but they feel like they are meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, if I should just take one, idea or one thing from everything we talked about in the last 30 minutes, and what it should be.
Talk to people, no matter if you like build something at the moment or not. It's also good for internal products, internal projects you have to defend to higher ups. And then don't be afraid to just kind of get going. Building something can be fun and can be a good way to learn something, even though nobody might use it, but it's still worth the time if you learn something.
Yeah. Thank you for a great chat, and I guess see you around.
Yeah, thank you too, and definitely see you around.